In today's video, we wrap up our study of Psalm 6 with the final two verses. Let's begin by reading verse 9. Eis ekusen Kyrios, tes de eseos mu. Kyrios ten prasuchein mu, pras edexito. Well, this first verb, eis ekusen, is from eis akuo, and so with the eis here plus the akuo, this would be something like to listen to. You see a sigma, aspect infix, en ending, and a lengthening of the akuo here. All this tells us is a third singular aorist active indicative. The subject here is Kyrios, so the Lord listened to. And what did he listen to? Tes de eseos mu. Deesis means petition or supplication. It's my, so it's the Lord listened to my petition or my supplication. And then a nice parallel clause here. We begin back with Kyrios, so the Lord, and then tein prasukein. This is probably a more familiar word. It means prayer, so there's some parallelism here between those. Obviously, a repetition of Kyrios. But the verb here is now prasedexito. This is from prosdexomai, or decomai. And the he here has combined with the sigma of the aorist to make the kasi. You see an ato ending and an e before the decomai. Third singular aorist middle indicative. And so the Lord has received my prayer. So that's the first verse here. Now let's move on to the final one. It's a bit lengthy and a little bit complicated, so let's buckle up and dive in. Eis kun theesan kai tarak theesan sfadra, pantes hoi echthroimu, apostropheesan kai katais kun theesan sfadra dia tachus. Well, let's make sense of these four verbs here. The first one, aiskun theesan, is from aiskuno. That means to be ashamed, to be humiliated, something like that. And you may be wondering, well, what's this spelling going on here? You see a theta, and so that may look aorist passive, and indeed it is. You see an ason ending, and so again, that looks third plural. So we have a third plural aorist passive. What's going on with the ei here? This is actually an optative. And if you've limited most of your studies to the Greek New Testament, you are not super familiar with the optative, with the exception of meganoita, which Paul and others will use for something like, may never be so, or something like that. In fact, based on the textbook you might have used to study Greek, you may have never even encountered the optative or maybe breezed past it. So let's take a look at the paradigm. I won't be able to go through everything in detail, but what I put on the screen here is the aorist active optative, the aorist middle optative, and the aorist passive optative. And the optative expresses a desired outcome. If you remember, mood expresses the relationship of the verb to reality, and so the indicative states what has happened or is going to happen. The subjunctive is the mood of possibility or contingency or potentiality. The optative is really a desired reality, what you want to happen. Think of it as like a wish mood, if you will. And with the active in the middle, you'll notice that the aspect infix, or the tense formative, if you will, is an sai all the way down, with some endings that probably look somewhat familiar, like a min here in the first plural or a te here in the second plural. Some of them maybe don't look familiar. It's actually borrowing the athematic me here. And so this would be something like, I wish to loose, or something along those lines, to express the optative. If you look at the middle, you'll see some familiar endings like the main or the metha or the sta or the unta there, but again, an sai aspect infix. And then you move to the passive, and you will see the theta that should be familiar across the board if you're used to the aorist passive, but you have an ei across the board with some endings. And so that's how the optative is formed, in case you haven't really looked at it before. And so if we look back over to our verb in question, you'll see there's a theta ei that indicates your aorist passive, and then the ason is actually it's the third plural, but it's not exactly shown on screen. But sometimes in the aorist, you'll switch to these ason endings. So this is going to be an aorist passive optative, as mentioned. And in fact, all of them are going to be that. So the sense here would be, may these people be ashamed. And we don't know exactly yet who he is talking about. Or I wish they would be ashamed. It's sometimes difficult to pick up the optative in English. Well, let's move on. The next verb is, again, a third plural aorist passive optative. Tarak theesan, you see that exact same spelling. And this means to be troubled or disturbed. So may they be troubled. And then sphadra, we've seen that before, greatly. So he's now pivoting from the praise of God for hearing his prayers to really an imprecation on whom? Well, it's pantes hoi ekthroi mu, all of my enemies, those who have put him in this position of being so distressed earlier in the psalm. So this is an interesting psalm because it goes from lament to praise to imprecation here at the very end. Next verb is apostropheison. That's from apostrepho, but it's the exact same parsing again. You see an EI. Because it is a phi in its original form, that theta drops out. But this is, again, a third plural aorist passive. So may they be turned back, something like that for apostrepho. And then we have kataiskun theesan, which is similar to the original verb here up at this top. These are related. It simply just means to be ashamed. Again, it does have that kata on the front, but it doesn't change the meaning that much. So again, may they be ashamed. We have sphadra again, so greatly ashamed, and then diatachus here, which would be quickly. And so what's interesting is you have all four of these optatives expressing a desired outcome upon the enemies who have been opposing the psalmist and by implication opposing the purposes of God. What I find really interesting about this, to wrap things up, is that all of these are passive as well. The psalmist here, and this reflects very nicely, by the way, the Hebrew, and so the translator did a good job with expressing all of this. The pivot to this passive, without specifying necessarily who he wants to put his enemies to shame, is almost certainly a divine passive. It's turning things over to God to bring about the judgment, to bring about the troubling and the shaming and the turning away of these enemies. He's not taking it into his own hands. He's saying, I submit them to you, Lord, for this to happen. And I think that's instructive for us all. So hopefully this is a helpful introduction to the optative if you haven't studied it before, or if you're stale. It doesn't show up a lot in the Greek New Testament, but it does show up quite a bit in the Greek Old Testament. So that ends our study of Psalm 6. Hopefully this was encouraging to you.